The auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Caps and gowns swayed in neat rows as names were called one after another, each student walking proudly across the stage to the sound of cheers and clapping. For most families, it was a day of celebration. For me, it was supposed to be the day my hard work was finally recognized. But instead, it turned into the cruelest humiliation of my life. I spotted my family seated in the crowd, my parents in the front row, my brother leaning back smugly, and my aunt whispering something that made them all laugh. My heart was racing with nervous pride. I had worked years for this moment, pulling late nights, surviving on instant noodles, while my brother wasted money partying with his friends. Still, I thought, maybe today, they'd be proud of me. When my name was finally called, I stepped onto the stage, trying to block out the doubt in my chest. I held my diploma, shook the dean's hand, and glanced into the audience. That's when I heard it. A loud, mocking voice. My own father's voice. Well, at least one of our kids got something. Not that it matters. She'll never be worth anything. The words sliced through the crowd like glass shattering on the floor. Students stopped clapping, heads turned. A wave of uncomfortable silence rolled through the room. Then came the laughter. My brother's laugh, sharp and cruel, echoing above the stunned quiet. I froze on stage. My hands trembled around the diploma. For a second, I couldn't breathe. All I could see were the smirks on their faces, my mother nodding in agreement as if the insult was nothing more than a casual truth. Whispers spread among the audience. Did her family just say that? That's awful. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, but at the same time, a fire started burning deep inside me. As I walked off the stage, my classmates patted my back awkwardly, unsure of what to say, but my brother made sure to add another jab as I passed by. Enjoy the piece of paper, sis. It won't pay the bills. That was it. The laughter, the shame, the smirks, something snapped in me. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't beg for their approval anymore. Instead, I looked straight at them and forced a smile that made them shift uncomfortably because they didn't know what I was thinking. They thought I was powerless. They thought they had broken me in front of everyone. But in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. I will show them what they fear most. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when I did, it wouldn't be with words. It would be with proof, with power, and with something they never imagined I had. Because while they laughed at me, I had been preparing. I had something waiting, something that would change everything. That day, in front of hundreds of witnesses, my family tried to crush me, but they had just handed me the perfect reason to rise and to strike back. The graduation wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of their reckoning. I left the auditorium with the diploma pressed flat against my ribs like a shield. Outside, balloons bobbed in the wind, and families posed for photos that would live on living room walls for decades. I stood alone near a maple tree, smiling for no one. My phone buzzed. 3 messages from classmates, all some version of, "Are you okay?" I typed the same reply to each. "I'm fine." The lie tasted like metal. My family didn't bother to look for me. They moved as a cluster through the crowd, my father leading, my mother at his shoulder, my brother trailing with his hands in his pockets and his mouth curled in that permanent smirk. At the curb, my father tossed me the car keys, like he was feeding crumbs to a stray. "Drive your mother home," he said. "We're meeting at Lark and Cedar at 7. Family dinner. Don't be late." Family dinner. As if nothing had happened. I arrived early and sat in the corner where I could watch the door. The restaurant's warm light made everything look softer than it was. Wooden beams, clinking glasses, low music. When they finally swept in, my brother announced, "The graduate has graced us," loud enough for nearby tables to glance over. My mother made a show of brushing imaginary lint from my gown folded over the chair. "You should have worn something nicer," she murmured. The waitress set down menus. My father waved his away. "We'll order the family platter," he told her, then turned to me. "You've had your fun. Now you'll look for something reasonable. There's a clerk position at the warehouse. Steady hours, no illusions." It was the word fun that scraped my nerves raw. 4 years of scholarships, internships, rate nights, and they called it fun? I kept my voice even. I already have a job. My brother laughed. "Oh, where? The coffee shop." "A firm. Finance." Not a lie. I'd signed an offer 3 weeks ago. Analyst, mid-sized investment firm downtown. Start date in 10 days. My father snorted. "Those places chew kids up in a month. You'll run home crying in a month." He sipped his drink and added almost kindly, "Better to be realistic, dear." I let the word hang. Realistic. In our family, it had never meant truth. It meant small. It meant stay where we put you. The food arrived. Conversation flowed around me like I was a coat draped on a chair. My aunt asked my brother about his projects. None. My mother detailed a neighbor's kitchen remodel. No one asked where I would live, what I wanted, who I was. At some point, my father leaned in, voice low. "And about your student account, there were some adjustments this year. Paperwork. Don't worry about it. I handled everything." A slow, cold prickle moved up my spine. "What adjustments?" He waved a hand. "You wouldn't understand. Forms, deposits. The bursar's office always confuses things." But I did understand. Last fall, there had been an unexpected surplus. Scholarship money combined with a stipend that should have been deposited into my account for living expenses. It never arrived. When I asked the finance office, they said it had been redirected at the guardian's request. I hadn't pushed then. Rent was covered by extra shifts, and I told myself it was a clerical error. Now, watching my father whisk the conversation away like dust, I felt the prickle sharpen into a point. The check came. My father took it without looking at me. He said, "You can get this one," lightly, pushing it across the table. "Consider it practice for adulthood." I slid the leather folder back. "No." He blinked, surprised at the flatness in my voice. "Beg your pardon?" "No," I repeated, and stood. Chairs scraped, silverware paused. "I have to go." On the way out, my phone buzzed again, this time from Maya, my best friend since freshman year, and now an assistant at a credit union downtown. "Maya, are you okay? I saw what happened. Call me." I stepped into the night air and dialed. She didn't waste time. "I was working the student accounts last month. Your name came across a transfer request. It looked off." My pulse thudded. "What kind of request?" "Guardian redirect. Money earmarked for you, stipend balance plus scholarship surplus, rerouted to an external account. The signature wasn't yours." Cold turned to clarity. "Do you still have the reference number?" I saved it. Papers rustled on her end. "I know that was risky, but it felt wrong. I can't share internal documents, but I can tell you where to start. The receiving bank was Merton Savings, branch on Oak Street." I thanked her, hung up, and stood under the restaurant's awning as a light rain began. Through the window, I could see my family still laughing, my father's gestures big and easy, my brother taking bites like victory. "Adjustments," he said. "Don't worry about it. I handled everything." I slipped the diploma from its stiff folder and looked at it under the streetlight. The paper glowed, proof of years they'd tried to erase. Then I slid it back and made a different kind of promise. Not to destroy them with anger, that would be too easy for them to dismiss, but to expose them with facts, paper for paper, signature for signature. Back home, I pulled the old metal lockbox from under my bed, the one my mother called your nest, and spread its contents on the quilt. Scholarship letters, internship contracts, email printouts, the bursar statements I'd filed away without thinking. I lined them up in a neat timeline. Dates, amounts, and absence where the stipend should have been. By midnight, the skeleton of a plan stood in my notebook. Visit Merton Savings with the reference number. Request transaction history related to my SSN and student funds. If blocked, file an identity misuse claim. Collect certified copies. Wait. Not attack, not accuse. Wait for the moment when paper would talk louder than any of us ever could. When I finally crawled into bed, the house was quiet. My brother's text arrived at 12:31 a.m. Congrats, analyst. Don't embarrass yourself at the warehouse interview. I stared at it for a long second and then deleted it without replying. They laughed at my graduation because they believed I had nothing but a piece of paper. What they feared most wasn't my degree, it was my ability to read the fine print. The Merton Savings branch sat on Oak Street, a modest brick building tucked between a coffee shop and an insurance office. On the surface, it looked ordinary. Glass doors, potted plants, a polite security guard nodding as I walked in. But to me, it was the gatekeeper of secrets my family had buried under signatures and redirected funds. I rehearsed my words as I approached the counter. Calm, professional, not the humiliated girl from graduation, but someone who deserved to be taken seriously. "Good morning," I said to the teller. "I need to speak with someone about an account transfer that may involve misuse of student funds. I have a reference number." Her expression shifted immediately. The phrase, misuse of funds, was a key. "Of course, one moment." She returned with a man in a navy suit, his name tag reading Mr. Lawson, account manager. Inside his office, sunlight streamed through blinds, cutting sharp lines across the desk. I slid the slip of paper with Maya's reference number across the surface. He adjusted his glasses. "This transfer was flagged internally as unusual. May I ask your relation to the listed account holder?" "It was supposed to be mine," I said evenly. "Scholarship and stipend money, under my student ID, redirected without my consent." His brows furrowed. Fingers tapped quickly on his keyboard. "The receiving account is under the name Thomas Keene. Does that sound familiar?" The air seemed to thicken. "My father." "Yes," I managed. "That's my father." Mr. Lawson turned the monitor so I could see. Transaction history scrolled down the screen. Deposits marked with university codes rerouted into the external account. Thousands of dollars. Every surplus, every stipend, siphoned away over 2 years. A hollow laugh escaped my throat. It was one thing to suspect, it was another to see the numbers glowing in cold, official text. "I'd like certified copies of all these transfers," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He hesitated. "We can provide redacted statements, but if you believe there's identity misuse, the next step would be to file a formal claim. That triggers an internal review." "Do it," I said. He nodded, printing pages that slid out with crisp finality. Each one landed on the desk like a hammer blow. Proof, proof, proof. When I left the branch, I held a folder that felt heavier than my diploma. For years, my family had laughed at me, diminished me, painted me as the failure. Now I carried the receipts of their theft, their betrayal, neatly stamped and signed. Outside, rain began again, soft at first, then steadier, drumming against the folder as if daring me to let go. But I clutched it tighter. That evening, I spread the documents across my desk, lining them up beside my scholarship letters and bursar statements. The timeline was clear. Funds earmarked for me, siphoned by my father into his account. And there, one large withdrawal, enough for the home renovations my mother had bragged about last winter. The anger that rose wasn't loud. It was quiet, razor sharp, the kind that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. A message pinged on my phone. "Dinner tomorrow. Mandatory. 7 p.m. Sent by my mother. No explanation, no warmth, just command. I stared at it, then at the proof on my desk. They expected me to show up and take more humiliation, but this time, I wouldn't be walking empty-handed. This wasn't just about stolen money anymore. It was about stolen dignity. They had mocked me at my graduation, convinced I had nothing. At dinner tomorrow, they would learn I carried something far more dangerous than anger. I carried evidence, and I was ready to use it. The restaurant smelled of roasted garlic and expensive wine, the kind of place my family liked to flaunt their status. The hostess led me to the corner booth where they were already seated. My father at the head, my mother beside him, my brother sprawled across the seat with his phone glowing in his hand. "You're late," my father said, glancing at his watch. I slid into the empty spot across from him. "I'm right on time," my brother snorted. "Guess even the graduate can read a clock." The waitress arrived with water. My mother ordered for all of us without asking. That had always been her way, decisions made above me, around me, never with me. I let the ritual play out, hands folded in my lap, the folder of documents pressed against my side like a secret weapon. "So," my father said, once menus were gone, "have you given any thought to the warehouse position? Good, stable work. You'll thank me later." I met his eyes. "I won't need the warehouse." He chuckled. "Of course you will. That finance job you mentioned won't last. Those places spit people out. Best to start small." My mother leaned in, tone sugar sweet. "Be practical, dear. You've always aimed too high. You're not suited for that kind of career." There it was again. Not suited. The same script they'd rehearsed my entire life. My brother smirked, raising his glass. "At least she got a diploma. Wall decoration, maybe?" Heat rose in my chest, but I kept my voice even. "You've always said I wasn't worth much, that I'd fail, that I was useless." I placed the folder on the table, sliding it forward. "But let's talk about worth." His father's smile faltered as I opened the folder. Certified bank statements fanned out across the white tablecloth. Numbers, dates, transfer codes, all neat, undeniable. "What is this?" my mother asked sharply. I leaned forward. "It's the money that was meant for me. My scholarship surplus, my living stipends, all redirected to your account, Dad. Thousands of dollars. I have the paperwork, the signatures, everything." The color drained from his face. My brother leaned closer, squinting at the pages. "That's ridiculous. You probably forged them." "They're certified," I cut in, "stamped by the bank, and I filed an identity misuse claim. There's a case open." The table went silent. For once, my father didn't have a quip, my mother didn't have a dismissal, my brother didn't have a laugh. Just silence. The kind that reveals cracks too wide to cover. "You don't know what you're talking about," my father tried, his voice low, but the tremor gave him away. I held his gaze, steady and unflinching. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. While you mocked me for chasing dreams, you were stealing from me. While you told everyone I wasn't worth anything, you were funding your life with money that belonged to me." The waitress approached with plates balanced on her arm. She froze, sensing the tension, then quickly retreated. My mother broke the silence, her voice sharper now. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're tearing this family apart." I laughed, bitter and short. "No, you did that when you called me useless at my graduation. I'm just showing the truth." My brother shoved his chair back, his voice raised. "So what? You think this makes you better than us? You think people will care?" I gathered the papers into a neat stack, sliding them back into the folder. "People will care when the investigation finishes, when the bank confirms everything, when others see the proof." My father slammed his palm against the table, silverware rattling. "You wouldn't dare!" I stood, calm, in the storm I had unleashed.
You're right. I wouldn't dare. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. But I already did. Gasps came from the table behind us, whispers spread. My father's hand trembled against the linen. I left the restaurant without waiting for dessert, the folder tucked under my arm like a victory flag. The night air was cold, sharp, but it tasted sweeter than anything I'd known in years. Inside, they were still frozen in their seats, finally powerless against something they couldn't twist or laugh away. The truth. The morning after the confrontation, the house felt different. Not quieter, just heavier, as though every wall carried the echo of what I had said. I could feel their anger through the silence, thick and sour like smoke clinging to the air. I made myself coffee in the kitchen, the folder of documents on the counter beside me. My brother stumbled in, bleary-eyed, glaring like I had stolen his sleep. "You think you've won, don't you?" he muttered, pouring orange juice with a clatter. "You humiliated us in public. Do you know how many people were at that restaurant?" I sipped calmly. Good. The truth should never stay hidden. His jaw tightened. Dad's furious. Mom, too. They're already talking about damage control. You should have kept your mouth shut. I met his glare. That's what you all counted on, that I'd stay silent, that I'd accept being small. I leaned in. Not anymore. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the cabinets. A minute later, my father's voice roared from the hallway, arguing with my mother. "She should have been grateful after all we've done for her. All you did. Don't put this on me." Their words bled through the walls, proof of cracks they could no longer hide. For years, they had been united against me, a wall of mockery and dismissal. Now the wall was splitting down the middle. By midday, the fallout spread further. My phone buzzed with messages from extended relatives. "Aunt Helen, I heard about what happened at dinner. Is it true?" "Cousin Sarah, your dad redirected your scholarship? That's insane." "Uncle Mark, if you need a place to stay, you're welcome here." The whispers were moving faster than my family could contain them. Their perfect facade, successful parents, golden son, forgotten daughter, was unraveling thread by thread. In the afternoon, my father cornered me in the living room. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice low and shaking with rage. "You've made a fool of this family. Do you understand what you've done? If this gets out, it's already out. The bank has the claim. The paper trail is undeniable." His face twisted. "You're nothing without us. Don't forget that. We gave you everything. You took everything. My money, my dignity, my moment. But you won't take the truth." For the first time, he stepped back, as if the words had struck him harder than any slap. That night, the atmosphere collapsed completely. My mother barely spoke, moving through the kitchen like a ghost. My brother slammed doors and cursed under his breath. My father sat in his chair, staring at the blank TV screen, his fists clenching and unclenching. And me? I spread the documents across my desk again, organizing, cataloging, preparing for whatever came next. The fear I once carried was gone, replaced by a steady calm. The fallout was here, and it was tearing them apart. But I wasn't afraid. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one breaking. They were. The next week moved like a storm front, slow, dark, and impossible to stop. Word had spread farther than I ever expected.
Neighbors who once smiled politely at my parents now crossed the street to avoid them. My brother's friends teased him in group chats that I somehow saw screenshots of. Guess the golden boy isn't so golden after all. But the biggest blow came on Thursday morning, when the phone rang. My father answered on speaker, thinking it was a routine call. Instead, it was Mr. Lawson from Merton Savings. "Mr. Keene," his voice said crisply, "our internal review regarding the redirected scholarship funds is complete. We have confirmed that the transfers were unauthorized under federal guidelines. The bank will be cooperating fully with the bursar's office and the state's education authority." My father fumbled for words. "Unauthorized? That's absurd. Documentation does not match your daughter's consent forms. You will receive a formal notice. Good day, sir." The line went dead. Silence filled the living room. My mother's hands shook against her teacup. My brother muttered, "This is insane. They can't do this." But I only leaned against the doorframe, calm and steady. "They can, and they did." My father turned on me, eyes wild. "Do you realize what you've done? We could lose everything, our savings, our reputation." "You should have thought about that before you stole from me," I said, each word like a stone dropping into water. "Before you laughed at me in front of everyone. Before you decided I was worthless." For once, no one interrupted me. No one laughed, no one rolled their eyes. They just stared, broken by the weight of consequences they thought would never come. That night, I packed my things. The lockbox of documents went into my bag, along with the diploma they had mocked. As I zipped it shut, my mother appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, drawn. "Where will you go?" she asked softly. I paused, meeting her eyes. For years, I had begged for her support, for some sliver of love, but now I saw only fear where pride should have been. "Somewhere I'm not treated like I'm nothing," I replied. I left without looking back. Weeks later, I stood in my new apartment downtown, sunlight spilling through the windows. The finance firm had welcomed me, impressed not only with my grades, but with the sharpness of my questions during orientation. I had learned how to read contracts, trace funds, and see through lies, and now I was using that skill for myself. On my desk sat a framed photo, not of my family, but of me in my cap and gown, smiling for the camera Maya had taken after the ceremony. Behind me, blurred in the background, was the outline of my family, scowling in the crowd. Proof of where I came from. Proof of what I overcame. Sometimes, late at night, I replayed their laughter in my mind. It no longer hurt. It fueled me. At my graduation, they said I wasn't worth it. But the truth had stripped them bare, and I had shown them exactly what they feared most, that I was stronger than all of them.